Welcome to Property Wealth Systems A to Z of property investing video series. We've put this series together to both hopefully educate and entertain you. Who are Property Wealth System? We are a collective of investors who have come together to help others achieve their goals through property, just as we have done ourselves. We provide amazing education for all investors, no matter their level of experience, whether they're completely new to property or they're already established investors themselves. Whether you're looking to get started or grow your existing portfolio, we are here to help you. I'm James D'Souza. I'm one of the lead trainers for Property Wealth System. I've been investing in property for the past 9 years, starting on buy-to-lets, working my way through to houses of multiple occupation and into larger deals, commercial to residential conversions. As we progress through this video series, don't worry if you miss a video or two. Just remember to save the emails into your inbox and you can go through and watch them at any time. If you missed last week's questions video, there is a link below that you can click to watch that right now. In this video, I'm going to be covering R for rent to rent. This is one of the strategies that's possible to apply even if you've got bad credit yourself. And for that reason, lots of investors are very interested in understanding how this works. Rent to rent is purely an example of an advanced deal structure. It's a way to control a property creatively without needing large amounts of capital to get started, or a mortgage. It's not a strategy on its own as such. As I said, it's just a way of acquiring properties. Once you've then got control of a property, you need to find an actual exit strategy for it, such as HMO or service accommodation, which are normally the two most popular strategies to apply when you've acquired a property on a rent-to-rent basis. If you don't know what HMO or service accommodation is, go to either the H or the S section, which is coming next week, and we will be able to train you about what HMOs and service accommodation are. One of the ways in which I can spot an uneducated investor a mile off is if they just say, I want to do rent-to-rent, and not really expand on that or know what they're going to do with the property once they've actually got the property on a rent-to-rent basis. The actual principle of rent-to-rent is very, very simple. Instead of buying a property to rent it out, you're simply getting control of someone else's property by renting it from them. Lots of investors do try to cut corners when it comes to rent-to-rent, but in order to do it legally, safely, and ethically, you need to let the current property owner know exactly what you're doing with their property. You need to have complete transparency and make sure that they are aware, because otherwise they might end up being very exposed and liable for things that they shouldn't be. One of the reasons, for example, that you need to do this is that they may be in breach of their mortgage terms and conditions by renting it to you on the wrong agreement or in the wrong way. That could also invalidate their buildings insurance, which, as I said, could leave them liable and in a particularly difficult position. So very important to be completely transparent with the property owner. Why might a landlord want to rent a property to you on a rent-to-rent agreement, knowing that you're going to be making more money out of the property? The reason they're going to do this is because you can entice them with the opportunity of guaranteed rent and a hassle-free rental experience. This is going to make any landlord's ears prick up. In order to secure a property, you'll usually have to pay a month's rent up front, as well as a month's rent as a deposit, roughly around that much. Ensure that the property is actually rentable in the state that you want to rent it in. So, for example, if you want to rent it as a HMO, it will need to be compliant with HMO legislation. So we might be needing fire doors, we might be needing smoke alarms in there as well. So on this basis, there will be some costs that you will have to front up. However, that is often far cheaper than the deposit, the refurbishment, and the fees to buy a property from scratch. The three key exit strategies that you might be wanting to operate once you've secured a property on a rent-to-rent basis are simply renting it out as a long-term AST let, as a buy-to-let. This can be quite tricky as there might not be enough margin in the deal for you to do this. You could be renting it out by the room. So in that case, that becomes a HMO, a house of multiple occupation. And the other strategy is to rent it out nightly, which is what we call serviced accommodation. It's usually those last two strategies, the HMO and the serviced accommodation, that are used to maximize your profits from doing this. If you do rent the property out as a HMO, it will need to be compliant. So it may require a license, smoke alarms, fire doors, and things like that, as I've already mentioned. As my mum always taught me, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. You need to run your numbers and do thorough due diligence when securing on a property on a rent-to-rent contract to make sure that at the end of the day, you are still going to be making money from it. I've met uneducated investors at networking events who have taken on a rent-to-rent property just to get involved in property and to feel like they're doing something, only to find out that they end up losing money from a rent-to-rent property. So it doesn't always guarantee cash flow. Remember to factor in the costs that you're going to need to pay, things like bills and license fees. They're going to have to come out of your pocket, and you're going to be guaranteeing the landlord rent. So if you don't have a tenant in that property, it's going to be coming out of your pocket. You need to think about things like, who are your customers going to be? Who's going to be renting that property from you? How much demand is there for rooms? All the things you'd be wary of when buying a property, you still need to be focusing on when securing one on a rent-to-rent basis. How long are you actually going to be taking control of that property for? Obviously, if you're spending money on it and kitting it up to HMO legislation, you don't want to just be doing that for 1 year, because all those costs would have been sunk in and you might not be able to actually make them all back. So a longer term agreement might be more beneficial for you. These are some of the things to be thinking about. How are you going to be finding and actually managing the tenants? Are you going to do that yourself, or are you going to have a letting agent in place? Again, that's going to potentially impact your cash flow. These are some of the things that uneducated investors don't even think about before diving headfirst into rent to rent. Remember, mistakes in properties aren't cheap, so do all your homework, do some thorough research before you implement a strategy like this, even though it might seem quite straightforward and easy. So that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed this brief insight into the concept of rent to rent, and it's given you some food for thoughts. Look out for next week's video, which is going to be S for service accommodation, so you can learn a bit more about one of the other exit strategies that might apply for a rent to rent property. We'd love to see you on one of the Kickstart webinars. You can sign up on the link below. Make sure you download our free ebook, you join our community Facebook group where you can connect and chat with other like-minded investors, and subscribe to this Property Life podcast from wherever you get your podcasts from. That's all from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in another one.